Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Show Review, where today we'll be going over the episodes 18 through 30 of Monster. So, throughout these multiple episodes, we start off being introduced to a man by the name of Rosso. Well, specifically, Nina meets this man called Rosso, and we learn that Rosso is an owner of an Italian restaurant, and he eventually hired Nina when she came looking to him for a job, and he saw that she lightened up the place, since he was the only worker there, and she lightened up the place. She brought in more customers and all that, so she brought more business. So he ended up taking her on and essentially kind of treated her like a daughter. And well, later on, we learn that Rosso is actually, or was actually, a hitman. And the reason why Nina came to Rosso was so that she could be trained by him. But after growing akin to him, growing fond of Rosso, and starting to see him as a father, she did not want to ask him about being taught in the ways of him being a hitman. But he eventually latches onto it, and we get a bit of a look back into Rosso's backstory. And well, at the beginning of this little episodic arc era, we see him make his coffee, and in his coffee, well, he's specifically his first time meeting back with Nina, him and Rosso, well, her and Rosso, and he puts 5 spoons of sugar in his coffee. And well, we see a flashback, and it shows the day which he quit being a hitman. And he was on this hit for this man, Aaliyah, black hair and all that. He was in a suit. And he was there, he was ready to assassinate him, cold as always, because he assassinated, I believe it was hundreds of people successfully, so he'd done a bunch of good jobs. Not good jobs, but he'd done a bunch of successful jobs. And so, we see Rosso scoping down this man, and he puts 1 spoon, 2 spoons, 3 spoons, 4 spoons, and then 5 spoons of sugar into his coffee. And that makes Rosso quit, because he realizes, hey, we're all human, we all have similarities. Therefore, he quit being a hitman. And eventually, he learns that Nina came to him to become more efficient in the ways of killing him with big guns. And after that, he kind of confronts her about it, and she was like, no, I wouldn't want that from you anymore, since I know you're gone from that life. So they end up parting ways on good terms. So then, after that, we're introduced to Rudy Gillen. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Rudy Gillen is a criminal psychologist who has had a rough time in life a little bit, but he is very highly dedicated to his work. He recently was divorced because he was so dedicated to his work, and he pried into the minds of people, and his wife didn't like that about him. So we're introduced to Rudy Gillen, and Rudy is a prior, not peer, but fellow student with Tenma when Tenma was in college. And Rudy was top of his class. He was a great man when it came to academics. And we learn this about him, and due to his criminal psychologist position, he's interviewing a serial killer, and this man has killed multiple people. And he's slowly opening his mind up to Rudy and revealing the intricacies of his murders and the reasons why he did it. And this leads to Rudy eventually connecting this kind of to Tenma. Tenma actually comes to him, and he begins to believe that Tenma may have been the reason why Jorgen, which is the serial killer, murdered. I don't know if that's exactly it, but I'm a little foggy on this part because I did kind of blast through it a little bit. But yeah, so Rudy gets into investigating Jorgen's stuff, and Jorgen tells him to go to this basement, and he goes to the basement, and he finds a bunch of pictures. They all have Jorgen's face on it as a child, as a woman and a child. But this woman never had a child, and he's looked into her, and he knows she never had children. And so he's looking into it, and then he realizes that all of them are plastered on. All the faces of this original child have been cut out. So he's like, who is this original child? Why did Jorgen do this before he ultimately killed this woman? And eventually, Jorgen reveals to him that he was killing him because a friend asked him to. Now, we obviously, due to dramatic irony, know this is probably Johan, which it ultimately ends up being. But he doesn't know that. So he eventually, him and Tenma come in contact somehow, and Rudy is tempted to turn Tenma in because he believes Tenma has always disliked him since school, because he knows that on the final exam, which is going to keep them separated from Rudy being the top and Tenma being below him, that Tenma saw him cheating. I believe it was a medical law exam, and he knows that Tenma saw him cheating. So he believes Tenma despises him because he beat him through unethical manners. So they go into this, and Rudy is reporting all that he's doing with Tenma to the police. And eventually there's a setup. And in this setup, we see Tenma and Rudy meet up. But as they're talking and discussing, Rudy learns that Tenma absolutely did not love him, but he respected him a lot. And he didn't hate him because Tenma also had to cheat on that medical law exam because it was very difficult. So after that, Rudy, while they're still there, well, I believe this happened a little bit before they were actually at the meetup, but they went to the meetup point, and Rudy revealed to him that he was being watched and the police were coming to get him. So this gives time for Tenma to get away, and Tenma escapes and all that. So then, since this is the episodic arc, we move on to a man by the name of Mueller. Now, Mueller is a ex-police officer who got into a crime family and is essentially like a high mafioso way, gangster, whatever you want to call it. And he's got a lovely family now. He has a new wife who has a kid, and the kid is slowly growing to him. Eventually, he calls him Dad, which means a lot to Mueller. But Mueller's past meets up to him, and Nina comes to find him. Now, Nina came to find him because he was one of the two police officers that earlier on killed her parents and killed the journalist. Well, her adopted parents, but the parents and the journalist. So she comes to find him. Well, she finds him and confronts him because she's been like spotting him out on the house that was directly adjacent to his own house, and they discuss, and eventually it is revealed that she kind of forgives him, but Mueller's own bodyguard agent, Roberto, I believe his name's Roberto, it's either Robert or Roberto, I'm just gonna call him Roberto because I believe that's what it was. Roberto ends up turning on him because he knows more than he should. He knows about Nina, he knows about, I believe he knew some things about Johan, and so he ends up turning on him. And through this, Nina helps Mueller to eventually escape Robert and all that, but then eventually Robert supposedly takes his family and son, his daughter, his son, his stepson, and his wife. So they come back, everything's fine, and Mueller eventually confronts Roberto, and he's like, yeah man, we're watching you and all that, and we've come for you. And then eventually one thing goes to the other, they end up escaping, everything's fine, but they end up taking Nina, and Nina gets taken, and then Mueller comes back, saves her, and all that stuff. So after that, we move on to another episode where we're back to Ava, the absolute op, who is, as you know, Tenma's ex-fiance. So with this, we see Ava still looking around trying to get Tenma caught because she's like, oh, no likes her. But she does improve herself over this arc. So we see her going. She ends up getting in contact with a man by the same Roberto, but we only know because it's the same character design. But she doesn't know Roberto has any affiliation with Johan, Mueller, and all that stuff, and Nina. So they end up, since Ava's down on her straight, she ends up looking for a rich man to pay her bills and keep her fed. So she ends up going to Robert, and who she meets at a bar. And Roberto, they end up going back to his place, and she reveals to him how she knew who Johan was because she had seen the picture of her father and Johan while Johan was recovering at the hospital 10 years prior. So after that, she is confronted by Robert. He's like, I'm gonna have to kill you. You know who Johan is? And she's like, if you kill me, I will let that picture get out, because she had removed the picture and she was gonna send it directly to the police if she died. So it's kind of like a death switch essentially. And with that, Roberto knows that he cannot kill her because if so, Johan's identity will be released. And with that, we have Roberto agreeing with Ava to take down Tenma because she wants to go get Tenma and get him put in jail. She doesn't want to kill him, she wants him to rot in jail. So they go looking for Tenma, who's at this estate of this criminal that he helped get back into health due to him being a surgeon in the underground circuit. Well, he's only done those twice, but he's technically a surgeon in the underground circuit, helping out Heckle and all that. But yeah, they end up going to this mansion, and Ava ends up trying to find Tenma. Well, Robert finds the bodyguard of the injured man first and wipes him out. And on the way there, Dieter is going to talk with the bodyguard to tell him that lunch is ready. So Dieter's running, and he finds Ava, and Ava tells him to run away and go back to tell Tenma that there's someone coming for him. So through this, we see Ava's unique change of character. I really actually like this because I had hated Ava prior, because I was just like, she's an op, she wants to bring Tenma down just because he was one of the few men who actually loved her and showed her actual kindness, and she's horribly reciprocating that. But we see that she actually doesn't want Tenma to die. She doesn't want Tenma to get killed or thrown behind bars, really. She still loves him and she cares for him. And so by doing this, she tells Dieter to tell him to go run. Ultimately, Tenma comes to try and save them because Dieter doesn't run off. He stays away because Dieter's the GOAT. Great kid. Dieter is phenomenal. But, yep, Tenma ends up coming, and they end up scaring off Roberto. They don't actually kill Roberto. It's not showing them killing Roberto. So, after Ava got shot by Roberto, they get taken back to the mansion. Tenma patches her up, and Tenma flees. So, then after that, we're thrown into entirely new characters beside Johann, and we're in Munich, and at Munich University, and Carl was one of the main people we're introduced to, and Carl is a orphan. Well, he technically is an orphan. I don't believe it's, no, his mom is said to be dead. So, we're introduced to Carl. Carl is the translator for this rich man, and the rich man has multiple translators come in each different day, and he has a woman who comes in like housekeeps for him. They end up getting in contact, and he wants to learn, or at least Carl does, about a man who is claiming to be the wealthy man's son, because he knows that he is this man's son because his mother told him so and gave him a keepsake for it before she ultimately died and left him to go to foster homes. So they get into investigating, and this man ultimately hangs himself. And with that, we go on to see as a investigator is thrown into the fray. His name is Richard. And this investigator, Richard, is looking into this because he did not believe the boy could kill himself. He has his own psychologist because he's a drunkard and he's recovering from having gotten kicked off the police force because he killed a kid who was also a murderer and not a good person at all, and a drunken stupor. Well, it's believed to be a drunken stupor. And with this, we see him begin to investigate whether or not this kid actually killed himself. So they go to looking, and with that, they ultimately discover a connection to Johann. And Johann is to Carl, instead of, we're on, I guess the focus on is on Carl right now. Carl has a connection to Johann because Johann is the, I believe, Thursday translator for the wealthy man. And ultimately, I'll go over this line first, since it technically, I guess, sequentially happens earlier on. But he eventually gets in contact with Johann. Him and Johann become friends. He shows that he understands Carl very much so. And with that, Johann is like, Carl, you need to reveal to this man that you're his actual son. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to throw into more emotional turmoil. Well, Johann ends up helping him out and reveals to him that he's in fact his father. And through this, he eventually reconnects with the wealthy man, and they become like father and son once more. Now, with Richard is slowly looking into Johann. He's finding out more and more about Johann. And Johann, being the phenomenal human manipulator that he is, he continues to kind of let Richard collect on him because he knows Richard is building himself back up from a broken background, kind of, or having been broken down recently. And so he lets him progressively get better and better and follow after Johann, keep looking into him, but not looking to him enough to figure out anything very deep. So Richard's looking into Johann, and eventually him and Johann come in contact, and they go to this restaurant, and Johann is pressuring him to admit that he, in fact, did not kill the young man in a drunken stupor, but rather he killed him in a completely sober mind, and he just killed him out of pure volition and human instinct. Now, I don't know if it's ever, well, so far it hasn't been specifically specified if Richard actually was in a drunken stupor when he killed Johann. Well, he did not kill Johann. Johann is still alive. When he killed the kid that he did, or the murderer that he did. And with that, we're left to presume kind of that Johann may have just been manipulating him to put him into a volatile mental state, but I don't know. It's really up for grabs whether or not he was actually in a drunken state when he killed the kid. Now, I mean, it doesn't really matter because the kid was a murderer and a horrible person, but it is, I guess, something up for speculation. I like that they left it kind of vague so that you can't speculate on whether or not Richard was an actually good man who wasn't, well, I mean, I don't know really how to specify, because, I mean, if he was in a drunken state, I guess it's more reasonable for him to have killed the kid, but if he wasn't, then did it out of pure human volition, that does make him a little bit of a worse person. But we see that he's a good person, because we see how he works with his family. And he's slowly trying to reconnect with his daughter and wife, who become estranged from him after he became more of an alcoholic and started breaking down and all that, lost his job and all that. And he's wanting to reconnect, he's wanting to meet with his daughter again, and he's slowly building up to that. And we see it when we go to a connection to Richard. That's one thing Monster does phenomenally, is it makes you build a connection with characters in a very, very short amount of time. Like Richard, I've grown very, very connected to him. And with that, like I said, we don't know if Richard is actually a bad guy. I guess ethically or morally a bad guy. though that is once again up to ambiguity because he can be perceived as either. But he's more a good guy because we see him making strives to be a good person. And so, with that, Johan is drinking in front of Richard as to try and learn him to drink, but Richard does not break because, like I said, he's a good guy. He's trying to recover from his previous addiction and make things right, make a better future for himself. And so, with that, we see Johan and him going on a walk, and Johan is slowly, I guess, rage baiting him more and more into thinking that he killed the boy out of pure volition when he was likely just a drunk and stupid. But they ultimately walk up to the top of the building, and Johan is still talking with him. And then episode 30 closes with us, I believe, hearing a gunshot. I think it was a gunshot. Yeah, it was a gunshot. And the beginning of the next episode, well, that's not even the beginning of the episode, it's the end of episode 30. They announced that Richard is dead. So Johan killed Richard, the person that we slowly, over a short amount of time, grown very attached to. And that took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting Richard to die because I was like, dang, I've really grown connected to this dude. I really like him. I hope that he's in here more. And then they just killed him all. No, I just remember this. One thing I forgot to gloss over so far was a brief stint between this and I believe it was Rudy. It is episode 23. This is probably the best episode of Monster so far. So we have Lunge is searching after Tenma. We see Lunge has really just gone down the gutter because he's kind of ruined his career in his search for Tenma. And through this, Lunge finds Tenma. Like, he gets onto him. He finds him and tracks him down. And Lunge ends up getting assailed by another person due to him looking into Tenma. And this person ends up shooting Lunge, and Lunge ends up getting the jump on him and all that, and they end up getting the jump on him. And however, Tenma is like, okay, I need to heal you. And Lunge's like, no, I'm not letting you heal me. You're a murderer. You're going to wait to kill me once you're down here. And well, eventually Lunge ends up blacking out, and Tenma heals him up and all that. And then Lunge wakes up in the hospital, and he's like, I'm still tracking Tenma down. My drive's never been stronger. I really like that about Lunge because Lunge is still very based in his beliefs. He hasn't let, I guess, Tenma's acts of kindness break him because he believes that Tenma is a good person at heart but has a alternate personality. He believes what is going on with Johan is actually going on with Tenma. And he's like, he believes Johan is a alternate personality of Tenma. And that's why Tenma has blamed all the murders on Johan. And with that, Tenma's like, I know he's a good guy, I know he healed me, but I gotta track him down because his other personality is out there killing people, even though he's not really, at least as far as I know. It might end up being that by the end of the story, I don't know. This story has phenomenal twists and turns, so I cannot wait to see. But yeah, that's what ends up happening. I did not do that episode justice enough. It is a phenomenal episode. I would highly recommend watching it. I mean, even if you haven't watched anything else in Monster, I do highly recommend watching episode 23 because it was phenomenal. It was peak. But yeah, that's all for episodes 18 through 30 of Monster. And I guess next I will probably be doing a review on either the Chainsaw Man or the Orchard Keeper by Cormac McCarthy, because I'm a huge Cormac McCarthy fan. And I have his 11 novels up there that I've collected over the last couple of months, really. No, it's probably about a year. But yeah, I've fallen in love with McCarthy's works, so I will be reviewing that sometime soon. Now, I don't know how good my review will be on it. It probably won't be too long because The Orchard Keeper is honestly a pretty short novel that's 246 pages. And you can obviously tell it's one of his first works because it's kind of disarrayed, kind of scattered bright. But I'm still going to review it because I have really enjoyed it because the work of McCarthy. But yeah, that's all for episode 5, actually, of Shelf Review. So thank you very much, and see ya.